I often think about those with hyphenated identities and hyphenated Americans and what the other side of the hyphen can come to mean unexpectedly and suddenly. When I think of some of the anti-Asian rhetoric surrounding COVID-19, I think about the fact that rhetoric is quite often something that's manufactured by people in positions of power.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We are here on Play Forward today with Pulkit Datta, filmmaker, writer, director, producer. We're going to be talking about a short film. Today is Wednesday, nominated by Richa Radola. Thank you, Richa. And Pulkit, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am very happy for you to be here. Look forward to talking about today's Wednesday. Before we start, can you intro yourself a little bit, background, filmmaker, and then set up the film for us?
Absolutely. So I'm based in New York City. I've been here for over 15 years. I grew up in a very nomadic childhood. I was moving around constantly, and I think that informed wanting to be a storyteller in some way, because I was always fascinated by how different people live and how people find connections with each other, coming from different backgrounds and things like that. So that led me into filmmaking. I've been working on everything from documentaries, scripted, music videos, commercials, nonprofit videos, everything in between. I'm one of those filmmakers that is really drawn to the challenge of a story rather than a specific type of filmmaking or storytelling. And so it could be any topic, really. I'm just attracted to stories that I feel haven't been explored in a certain way, and if I can add something new to it by making it myself. So that's in a nutshell kind of my storytelling or filmmaking journey and what I like to do.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for that background. It's definitely helpful. Today's Wednesday is so rich in terms of the international flavor of the movie, New York City flavor, and extended parts of New York City. It's just a really great snapshot of a time during COVID when everybody was in lockdown and how people came together, as you say, and what's the common shared themes that we all um, face, and it literally boiled down to cooking, exercise, maintaining life. So much of what we did involved or started at that baseline level, and so much of that we shared. Can you tell us a little bit about today's Wednesday, and why you made it? What was the inspiration?
Absolutely. So it started because I'm part of a group called the Asian American Documentary Network. The short form is ADOC. And during the COVID lockdowns, they started an initiative where they were encouraging filmmakers to tell COVID-related stories since everyone was sitting at home. But the stories had to be related in some shape or form to the Asian American experience during COVID. So it was very open-ended, but it was an interesting prompt for me to take and sort of build something from there. And what I was really fascinated by at that time was how everyone took to social media, and everyone was posting their daily lives on social media, every single little thing they were doing, and how so much of it was stuff we all had in common. And so I was just fascinated by just seeing, the constant scrolling on social media while we're stuck at home. I was just fascinated by seeing how so many of our experiences were actually quite similar. And that was kind of a uniting thing. So I started reaching out to a bunch of people online, asking them to send me their footage of what they were doing at home. And so it was a fully crowdsourced film in the sense of the footage from the film. Um, there's a few things that I shot myself, but everything else is crowdsourced footage from all over. And the idea was I didn't give the people too many prompts of what to send me. I just said, listen, send me videos of how you think your day is going during the lockdown. And I wanted people to be creative on their own as well and kind of take some initiative. And what you see in the film is what came out of that is some people were really focused on cooking. Some people were focused on working out in creative ways. Some people were focused on just gathering with their loved ones and doing something memorable, playing games, anything like that, or playing music. So then it was a challenge of sort of putting it together. What is the narrative thread or the arc that I wanted to convey through the story? Um, and the process of making this film was actually very difficult for me because it was also a time that I was going through very difficult personal situations. The COVID lockdown obviously was very tough, and then I ended up losing my father during COVID. And so I actually put a pause on this film completely because I was dealing with that. And it was one of the most difficult projects to finish when I came back to it. But I realized I had to finish it because it was a capsule of a moment in all of our lives that I think changed everyone. It fully transformed everyone.
Yeah.
And, my motivation for finishing it, even as difficult as it was after everything I'd been through, was to make sure I am able to create something and put something out into the world that becomes this archive of this moment. And also that we don't forget it. I think that was a really important part of it.
Thank you. My sympathy goes out to you with the loss of your father during that time, and so many people lost. I actually also lost my father during that time, not to COVID, but it just happened to coincide with that, and I couldn't go see him.
I'm sorry
Um,
about that.
yeah, oh, thank you. And so, you know, getting to that second portion of the play forward and the meaning of the film and exploring it, you've mentioned how we were so changed, by it. What did you find, it's kind of in terms of meaning, it's kind of a built-in two-part question with respect to, well, what happened? Yes, we were all in this lockdown, we were all isolated and reaching out and, ways for communication and trying to keep ourselves happy. And then how have we all been changed? How do you see it?
That's a really good question. And it's something I actually have thought about a lot since finishing the film and trying to get it out there. Um, I think we've been going through phases of grief, but also denialism. And I think what was happening during COVID was because we were all in it together, everyone was open to COVID stories. The moment the world started opening back up again, and I don't want to say COVID was over because it's technically still not gone. But the moment it stopped being this urgent epidemic and the world started opening up again, a lot of people were rushing to normalize their life in a way and normalize however they define it, or trying to go back to a certain sense of normalcy. And I think that's the part that affected me or frustrated me the most. Was I think there was this uh, effort to just kind of forget what happened and just move on. And I think what we're not grappling with as a society around the world or anywhere, even in this country, is the collective trauma that everyone experienced and actually how it affected everyone psychologically. I think there's a lot of issues that have emerged out of it, out of that whole experience. It's changed a lot of relationships between people. It's changed people's physical health and mental health. And I think it's something that we're not openly grappling with. And so, this film is tiny. It's only 8 minutes long, and it's such a small capsule of this moment. But I had so many motivations to make sure I got it done and got it out there. And in a way, like I said, I mentioned my father. It's also sort of a tribute to him because um, while the lockdown was happening in the early weeks and months, he would be the one person constantly calling me every day to make sure I was okay. And so while I was collecting these videos from people online, he was the one calling me to make sure I was okay. And so in a way that was sort of a tribute to him to make sure I finished it. And then the film release side of things, or the festival side, again, that was the other challenge because once we came out of it, people wanted to move on and pretend like it didn't happen. This film didn't get selected for most festivals that I submitted to. It got rejected from most places because it wasn't seen as relevant anymore. And this was immediately like a year or two after this, right? Um, the one festival that gave me a platform was the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival, and partially because the executive director of the festival, Francis Colato, amazing person. He actually encouraged me to finish it because he knew I was working on it, and he said, "Finish it and send it to us. If it works, we'll screen it." So he actually was the one that gave the film the platform that I wanted. But then I also realized after screening it there, I got a great response at the festival, but then I also realized that I didn't really need to do more festivals with the film.
The topics that you raise of denial with respect to like the grief and perhaps this grief that hasn't fully been processed, during one of the more challenging things certainly was for parents of young or any age children, but particularly young children to educate them. There was one mother that was talking about how she it sounded like what she was saying was she was a very aggressive alpha type mother and wanted her children to be the best of the best, which is very common with um immigrant stories. And um and then she started reevaluating whether that was really a good thing to be doing to her kids. Is that really a good goal to have? And measuring success kind of at least in that context with relation to parenting and then, raising adults that go off and make money and have careers and are independent. So that whole kind of independence versus interdependence thing, this idea of trauma and then not facing the trauma. Um, yes, many people died. Yes, many people were isolated for a period of time. What do you think was the trauma that was in the collective psyche?
I mean, it's multiple levels to it, right? Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional to kind of really dig into the science of it, but I think just from personal anecdotal,
Not what we're looking for here. We're
yeah,
not,
of course,
we would get one of those.
of course. The trauma was, I think, multi-level. I think for me, for example, living in New York in the early stages of a lockdown, I live in Harlem, which in an area which is in between several hospitals. And the trauma here was very direct, where literally I would see and hear ambulances going down my street every day. And you kind of it's a weird thing to get used to, of just hearing ambulances all the time, right? And you know what that means. New York was also at that point the epicenter of COVID in the US at least. And there were all these stories of giant, refrigeration trucks with bodies of people who had passed away and those visuals. And, I have friends who are healthcare workers. So they were sending me messages or pictures or videos of what they were seeing. And so it was personal trauma. It was secondhand trauma. It was hearing and seeing what other people were experiencing, but also knowing that you're in the middle of all of this. And this is not normal. It's not right. And it shouldn't be happening. So that's one level of it. There was a bunch of other layers to it too. I think, one of the themes of the film of Today is Wednesday is because it's focusing on specifically on Asian American experiences during COVID. It's also delving into uh, the sort of rhetoric that was sort of more hateful rhetoric that was being put out against Asian Americans specifically. There was a lot of anti-Chinese rhetoric, but also by extension, there was a lot of other stuff floating around. And that also made people even more nervous in their neighborhoods or in their lives, in addition to being worried about getting sick, right? So it's just personal safety, of belonging, of everything being questioned all at the same time. I know personally, I would, if I would go out for walks, um, in the park or something, I would always be aware of who's around me and is there anyone looking at me differently or with any ill intention, because I would always be nervous about that, because the sentiment was so strong. So I think that was another layer of trauma of just living in fear. And so I think what happens to a group of people when they're living under layers of fear, different kinds of fear. There's, like I said, there's health fear, there's physical violence, emotional, You're watching the news, which is constantly just a lot, a lot of stuff being thrown at you. So it's all of that. It's all of that together that I think just informs, it's just a lot of trauma for people
Yeah,
to
no,
handle.
that's great. Thank you. I mean, for I think that would be quite a great response for a health professional. Maybe
Yeah.
that's an alternative. You know, that said, and the anxiety that creates and the stress that creates, and then the consideration that there hasn't been a way of confronting that and a way to relieve that wound. How do you think we can do that? How do you think we can, as people, confront that period and heal?
You're asking all the good questions. As artists, I believe we have some power in opening up ways for people to have those conversations, right? We make our films as a way to explore not just our own issues, but to have conversations on bigger issues around us in society. And so whether it's this film or any other film that I'm working on, I hope in some way that when I show it to people, whether it's in an audience in person or it's online, I can engage in meaningful conversation around that topic and hopefully help people deal with it in some way on their own as well. For example, with today is Wednesday and just my own personal tragedy that I went through with COVID, I was actually very vocal about it online. I would share a lot of what I was going through on social media. And that was there was a twofold reason to that. One was it helped me deal. I am at the core, I'm a writer. So for me to be able to write things out and post and express it felt like I was letting it, I was expressing myself and helping myself. But also I knew there was a lot of people who weren't able to do that or who weren't comfortable in doing that. And the number of DMs I would get after those posts of people sharing their own experiences. And then I would just engage in full conversations with them, either phone calls or messages or whatever they're comfortable with, because I knew that one by one, there's a way to help people deal with that in whatever way, right? Um, I hope, I mean, like I was saying in the beginning, I think as a society as a whole, we've tried to, rush past it and pretend like it didn't happen. And I think that's causing a lot of problems, residual problems. Um, I'm hoping through the art that we make and by talking about it more and more, it inspires more people to sit with that discomfort. Because really, I think the only way to really deal with it and heal from it and get through it is to allow yourself to sit with that discomfort. And it's really not an easy thing to do. Um, but once you kind of feel the feels, as I say, you really feel the feels, you actually come out of it feeling better. And I know I want to be careful using words like healing and things like that because obviously everything's a process and everything's a journey. So there's no like full 100% healing that everyone's going to be fixed. But as long as we can help people through that with the tools that we have, and in my case, it's my storytelling and my films, I'll keep doing that.
Awesome. Thank you. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that. The conversation is so important, engaging it and promoting it. Um, it's so helpful to a lot of people and being a person who can initiate that with their art, with their voice, using it in that way. I mean, it's critical. Thank you. And I thought something that I really loved about the film is title, and as well as, the title encapsulating everything is like today is now. Today is here and focusing on today and you know having that moment to moment awareness and um bringing that in fully, I think goes very well with what you're talking about in terms of how can we confront something that is by facing everything's here now. Um, so last question playing forward, since finishing the film, which was not easy, and many filmmakers know it's, the it's not done until it's done.
Yeah.
And um and that can be a road, a long road. So how have you been personally changed since completing the film?
Like I said, completing the film was very difficult, but once I completed it, it was a cathartic experience. Once I finished it, I didn't look at it for a while. Um, and and I don't know if that was a reaction to part of me not wanting it to be over, clinging on to something. Um, but I think once I did finish it, there was a part of me that kind of breathed a sigh of relief that this was something I can now share with more people and now have more meaningful conversations around. Um, I think as far as how like other ways that it's changed me, I think that's still an ongoing process. But I think the one certainty that I feel after all of this is it's made me much more sure of the kinds of stories I want to tell and the honesty with which I want to tell them. I think before all this happened, I was in a way still playing this industry game of, constantly hustling, trying to reach certain milestones that were laid out by, larger industry trends or whatever, and trying to basically hustle constantly to reach whatever pinnacle of success that people think is successful in the film industry. After all of this, and not just making the film, but even experiencing that whole COVID period and my own loss, it completely changed me as an artist. And I am now much more honest in the films I'm making, what I want to say in them, how I'm saying them. There's less fear, I think. And I think once you go through the worst possible time in your life, uh, things seem less scary afterwards. And so I think that's the part of it that I've been embracing more is let's, really dig deep into what I want to say and what I want to share, and let's not be scared of that. And I
Awesome.
think that's coming out in new works. But also, I also just want to mention that I appreciate talking about this film now because it is, as of now, this is the 5-year anniversary of the start of the COVID lockdown, and I'm curious to see how many people actually look back at it and talk about it, and to be able to talk about the film here, I'm hoping it can again start some conversations.
Thank you, Pulkit. Thank you. And to sum what your film is and also what you talked about how being changed, I think what I'm hearing in you is, hey, it's time to live, really live.
Mhm.
And to do that, you got to be honest and be in the moment. And thank you so much for being here, Pulkit Datta, a filmmaker, writer, director, producer as well. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, man. Till next time,
Thanks.
everybody. We're out on
Bye.
Play It Forward. See ya.